Welcome everyone to another edition of Insure Wealth. Now the word for today, a word that can mean a great deal to your family and your favorite charity, is leveraging. Now you're about to hear how you can leverage retirement money for your family, your charity, for peace of mind. And here to tell you why and how is Howard Kaye. Welcome, Howard.
Thank you, Michelle. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you.
You know, I love talking about leveraging, so let me just say right at the start, it's going to be a terrific show because we're going to be discussing your retirement accounts. These involve your 401k plans, your pension, anything that has been accumulating throughout the years that you have not been taxed on, and that's where leveraging really comes into play.
Well, let's get some basics about this.
Well, what most people don't understand is that Uncle Sam will tax your retirement accounts. Now, you've never paid income tax on this money because when you were working, you were putting money away into retirement.
And that was the benefit of it.
Absolutely.
Right.
So you got to grow that money on a tax-deferred basis. But ultimately, there's going to be income tax. And when you pass away, there could be estate tax depending upon the total size of your estate. Okay. In addition, depending upon which state you reside in, there could be state income tax and state inheritance tax.
Okay, so it's like double dipping and triple dipping. You just keep getting hit on different levels.
Absolutely. There could be a triple or quadruple tax. The bottom line is that the government could take as much as 70% of these monies from your family. So just as a quick example, right, if you had $1 million in a retirement account and you hadn't touched it and you passed away, well, what is your family going to receive? Maybe as little as $300,000.
I mean, nobody wants this. So how do you protect your money? How do you, the money that we've worked so hard to earn?
Well, there's a few different ways, but of course what most people don't understand, or they think they understand, is that there is something that they can do about it.
So what can people do?
What they can do? Well, of course we talk about life insurance most of the time here.
Right.
We do discuss annuities to some extent as well. And annuities are typically a large part of retirement plans. But let's just take the overall value of a $1 million retirement plan, whether, again, it's an IRA, 401k plan, whatever it may be. The bottom line is, how can we pass that money along to the family so that they don't end up with just $300,000.
Right.
Now, there are various ways that people have utilized things called stretch IRAs, where they'll take distributions during their lifetimes, and then it will continue throughout their child's lifetime.
Is that, now, do they have to pay a penalty when they get a distribution?
No, as long as they're paying, as long as they're taking their RMD, their required minimum distribution, these are certain strategies. But I'm not interested in the strategy. What turns me on is to show somebody how to leverage that money. Again, the topic of the show.
Right.
What do I mean by leveraging that money? If I can show somebody how to turn it into 20 times what its original value is, that to me is incredible.
Okay, you've definitely got my attention here. Okay, 20 times the amount. So, okay, so tell me about this.
So let's give you an example. Boy,
okay.
I hope this example is a 20 times.
Because, no, we're not going to let anyone down. Tell us.
But let's see what this one is. There was a situation where I had met a gentleman. He had a $4 million IRA.
Okay.
Now, people think, oh my God, this is not in my realm. I don't have $4 million. Whether it's 400,000, 4 million, or 40 million, take a zero, add it, or take a zero off.
Okay.
It all
It's
pro-ratas.
not going to make a difference. It's
okay.
the same thing.
So he has $4 million sitting in the IRA. He's 69 and a half. He says he was about to turn 70. And he says to me, I have a terrible problem. I said, what's that? He said, well, 70 and a half, I'm required to start taking distribution on my IRA. And I said, so what's the problem? He says, well, you have to understand that I'm not used to paying that kind of income tax.
Okay.
And I said, but the bottom line is, 4 million producing whatever the amount is, let's say you're starting at 3%, that's 120,000, so you pay income tax. He says, no, you don't understand. The amount of income tax that I will pay on my distribution is greater than the amount of money that my spouse and I live on each year.
So he can't do it.
Psychologically, I can't handle that.
Right.
I said, well, you don't really have a choice, but if you did, what would you like to see happen? He says, well, it's funny that you say that because I was discussing this with my attorney. And I said, and what was the discussion? We said, well, if the government had made a special concession for us and said that, you don't have to distribute at age 70 and a half. I said, well, you know, the funny thing is a lot of people think that that would be wonderful. He says, well, I do too, and my attorney even agreed. I said, well, the first thing you need to do is maybe get a new attorney, because you're going to see in a second why it makes no sense.
Okay.
I said, what are you earning on your money? He says, well, we typically make about 6%. Now, this was some years ago, so ladies and gentlemen, don't all go out thinking that we're going to make 6% out there, but this is what he was making. So I said, that's $240,000 a year. I said, now, that's more than what your RMD, your required minimum distribution, is. But let's not worry about what the government tables say.
Okay.
Let's take more.
Okay.
I said 6% on $4 million. Oh, in this example, we're not talking about distributing. We're just going to accumulate because they made a special concession, so to speak. I said, so at the end of 12 years, your money doubles at 6%. So now you have $8 million. At the end of 24 years, you now have $16 million. At the end of, he said, Howard, stop. Let's go 28 years. My wife will be in her 90s. I'll be dead. I said, okay, so let's assume you've got by that time $18 million. Now what happens? You pass away.
Right. You're going to be hit with some significant taxes.
And what are these taxes going to be? He's going to pay approximately $8 million in income tax, and then another $5 million, because of the size of his estate, in estate tax. So what's the bottom line? Congratulations, you turned your $4 million IRA today into $5 million after tax 28 years from now.
It makes no sense because you're hit so many times with all of those taxes. So how do you avoid that?
Exactly. So how do we avoid that? So I said to him, thank God the government doesn't make this special concession for you. I said, watch. The $240,000 a year, which is your 6% on $4 million, take it out. Again, don't go with the government tables. Take that money out each year. You have to pay income tax. What's the income tax going to be? It's going to be approximately $100,000.
Okay.
Now I have from $240,000, $140,000 after tax. He says to me, so what can I do with that money? I said, you can do whatever you want. You want to go buy CDs, treasuries, bonds? That's up to you.
Right.
He says, well, what do you suggest? I said, well, it's very simple. I'm going to buy a life insurance policy. Now, I couldn't buy any insurance on him because his health was not good. But his wife, who was in her 60s at the time, we were able to. Okay. And that $140,000 a year that he will be receiving after income tax will purchase $10 million of insurance on his wife's life.
Now, was there a particular type of life insurance or does it really depend on,
on the
person?
These are really what are called universal life insurance policies. Okay. And it's the traditional type of approach, whether it's whole life, universal life, but a permanent type of insurance, so something that will stay there forever.
Okay.
So this policy would stay in effect forever based on her age. And like I said, I think she was 64 at the time. So $140,000 a year, purchase $10 million of insurance. Now, what happens when they both pass away? The $4 million in the IRA, I really never touched, did I? No. Because all I did was take out 6% a year, the interest.
So when they both pass away, the IRA money gets taxed?
Well, wait a minute. Not necessarily.
Okay.
Why? What did the children end up with? They ended up with $10 million. Why? Because we bought a life insurance policy in an irrevocable life insurance trust. So $10 million immediately goes to the kids.
And that's protected. That's protected from estate taxes.
No income tax, no estate tax.
Okay.
Now, if they got $10 million, that's already twice what they would have received had they done it his way, correct?
Right.
Remember, they were going to get $5 million.
Right.
Now they just got 10. Next, you just brought up a good point with the $4 million that's in the IRA. Isn't that going to be taxed? Well, sure. If he leaves that to the children, the kids may end up with $1 million too. But they already received $10 million,
which is great.
They don't need the other $1.2 million net. So what is he going to do with the $4 million? He's not going to give it to the kids. He's going to leave it to charity. And when he leaves it to charity in the form of his own foundation, for example, or outright to a particular organization.
Then it's not taxed?
Right.
There it is.
There's no income tax and no estate tax.
Right.
So now what's the bottom line? I took his $4 million IRA that would have been worth approximately $1.2 million, and I turned it into $10 million for his children.
Which is tax-free because it's protected in a life insurance trust.
Correct.
Okay, and the
And
rest
then
are charity.
$4 million to charity.
Right.
Now, that's $14 million net, net, net. What do you think he would have to grow his IRA to right now in order for his family and charity to receive $14 million after all taxes?
I have no idea. You're the money guy. How much?
I would tell you between $45 and $50 million.
All right, well, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Okay, ever.
This 70-year-old man is not going to turn his $4 million into $45 or $50 million. In fact, he's had the first 70 years to try to turn it into 45.
And it didn't happen.
And it didn't happen.
Right, okay.
So, now when we talk about leveraging 20 times, his net to family would have been $1.2 million. My way, it was $14 million between family and charity. His IRA was $4 million. He'd have to grow it to $45 to $50 million.
Right. And so that's really what this does is it grows his money, really just takes as much of his money as it possibly can to put it in and save it for both his charity and his family.
Absolutely. Now, let's reduce the numbers for a moment, because before we get to the next concept or strategy within this vein, I want to just take some zeros off, because $40 to $50 million is a huge number for people to grasp if they don't have that.
And not everybody can really relate to that, and I think sometimes it gets people a little scared.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So let's use somebody that has $500,000 in their IRA. Now, you have a few different types of people. You have the person that says, I need this money to live on. Right. So regardless of the government telling me it's 70.5, I'm 65. I'm going to start taking money because I need it to supplement my income.
Do you find that most people are sort of in that first category, that they're going to need that money to live on? And
actually, no, I don't. Again, it depends on the demographics.
Right.
For people that are really looking into their estate planning, typically, no, they don't need that money, and they're typically waiting until they're 70.5 to distribute, because that's what the law says. And they don't want the money. And like I gave you the example of this gentleman, he didn't even want it at 70.5.
Right.
But he had no choice.
Well, we found a solution for that person.
Correct.
But okay.
So, but there are people that absolutely need that income. So the person that has $500,000 in there that says, yes, I need the income, there's not much I can do as far as helping him to avoid taxes, because he needs to use that to supplement his living. Right? Okay. But then you've got somebody that says, yeah, I have $500,000 in my retirement account, but I don't need this money. And what I was thinking of doing was possibly going into a Roth IRA. Now, a lot of people have done that, and they think it's a wonderful solution, and it is, but there's huge income taxes that have to be paid up front. Why? Because if I move $500,000 to a Roth, I have to pay the income tax right now, which could be as much as $200,000.
And that depletes almost half of what you're doing.
Well, you come out of another pocket for that $200,000. This way, your $500,000 goes into the Roth, and now everything you earn is tax-free.
Okay.
But there's a better solution.
What is it?
The better solution for the person that doesn't need that money to live on is take the $500,000. Now, I want to compare it to the Roth for a moment. You went into your other pocket to pay the income tax for $200,000, right?
Right.
We'll do the same thing for me. Go into your other pocket to pay your income tax. Now I've got $500,000. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to buy a one-payment life insurance policy.
Okay.
So if I have a husband and a wife, age 70, I can receive approximately a 4.5 to 1 return on my money.
All right, that's a great return.
Now, what is that in dollars? 500,000, a 4 to 1 return is $2 million. 4.5 to 1 return is $2,250,000.
Wow.
Now the question is this: I've got this couple age 70. The alternative is to go into that Roth. Do you believe that they can turn their $500,000 in that Roth IRA into $2,250,000 by the time they die?
Is that even possible?
I guess if they find the right stockbroker, or they find the right stock, or whatever it may be.
But that's going to take a significant amount of work and constantly babysitting that money to try to move that around, and it probably won't happen.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, you hit the nail on the head. Why do you want to have to manage it? I don't have to do anything.
No,
I'm buying insurance. The only thing I have to do is drop dead. But remember something. We're all going to die, regardless of whether I
I know,
own life insurance or not.
nobody wants to talk about this. That's why they're scared to buy life insurance, because people don't. They think if they buy it, they're going to die, and everybody is going to die.
Right.
Okay.
But one thing has nothing to do with the other.
I know.
But you bring up a very good point. So in this example, why manage anything? I bought the insurance. It's there from the beginning. Now, let's take another scenario. Someone that doesn't do a Roth IRA. Somebody that just says, I don't need that money, but I don't want to distribute the entire amount out of my IRA and pay that big tax. I'll just take the government approach, where it's the required minimum distribution.
Okay.
And then the question becomes, well, what are you going to do with that money? Well, I'll just put it into my investments or into a CD or whatever it may be. Well, here's an alternative. If I've got $500,000, and let's say they tell me we're making 4% a year. Take 4% off, that's $20,000. Pay the income tax. Let's say they're left with $14,000.
What are they going to do with that?
A year. The $14,000 I'm going to take and buy an insurance policy on the same couple, age 70. And for $14,000 a year, I should be able to buy just about $1 million of insurance that would be paid out tax-free. Now,
I mean, that makes sense. But again, you have to be guided to that.
You have to be guided, and you have to know that you don't need that money to maintain your lifestyle.
Right.
So very important. But now you can at least get an idea of the leverage of life insurance combined with the retirement accounts. And it's so beautiful because the retirement accounts have such heavy taxes attached to them. When you're able to show somebody how to leave much more to the family as well as to their favorite charity, what can be better?
Now, Howard, you created a plan, actually, the 401k plan. Kaye, Howard Kaye. I love this. I love this concept.
Thank you. You've heard of it.
I have heard of it, of course. So tell me about this.
The 401k plan, 401k-A-Y-E. It's a play, obviously, on the retirement plan. Everyone knows about a 401k. But this is an idea that shows younger people how to plan their retirement in a completely different fashion.
Am I considered younger?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much.
And this works perfectly for you.
Okay.
Because the 401k plan, another name for it is create your own inheritance or be your own beneficiary. One of the things that people...
Wait a second, we can be our own beneficiary.
Absolutely.
Okay, explain this.
So what people really dislike about life insurance is that here I am paying for something that I never get the benefit of. Yes, I understand in theory my family gets the money, it helps protect our estate, and everyone will continue living beautifully. But I don't,
but what's in it for
I don't
me?
see it.
What's in it for me? Right.
So if you could buy life insurance and be the beneficiary now all of a sudden, that's something that's enticing to you. So this all came to be, and that's why I say you're the perfect age as well. I had somebody at the house one day doing some work, and I said to him, you know, how's business going? And he said, everything's good between my wife and I, and we're doing well. We're putting money into retirement. I said, so what are you making these days? He said, between the two of us, around $150,000 a year. I said, okay. And what do you do for retirement? He says, we put $20,000 a year away between the two of us into a retirement account. And he seemed very excited about this. And I said, well, what's all this excitement about? He says, well, I'm putting into this brokerage account. I'm not going to mention any names. And you know, the market's doing well, so it's growing. And I said, well, what happened with the $20,000 a year a few years back? Well, that he didn't want to discuss, of course, because obviously the market didn't do well. I said, well, I'm going to ask you a question. And now apply this to yourself. Because we all put money away in some respect for retirement. I said, you're 45. He said, correct. I said, what's your goal? He said, what do you mean, what's my goal? I said, well, you're planning on retiring? He said, yes. I said, what age? He said, 70. I said, okay, so you're going to put $20,000 a year away until that time. What's your goal? How much do you want it to be worth?
Okay, and so you had to refocus him.
He had no idea. Now, if I pose the question to you, Michelle, you're putting money away each year. Do you know what you want it to be worth?
Well, as much as possible.
Right, but there's no dollar amount that you can attach to it because we don't think in those terms. You have no idea. You just assume whatever the market does, that's what it's going to be worth.
Right.
So he said to me, well, Howard, I was told by my broker what would happen if I made 6% a year or 8% or 10% or even 12%. He showed me the growth, the numbers of what it would be. Well, again, let me ask you, Michelle, have you ever seen someone in the market make a steady 8% each and every year?
Of course not.
10%, 12%? Of course not.
No.
So I said to him, a better depiction of what might take place would be if one year he showed you making 3%, 1 year 12%, 1 year losing 16%, 1 year flat, losing 2, making 7, and so on and so forth.
Right, that's realistic.
I said, because let me tell you, the day, and if it doesn't happen during these next 25 years until you get to 70, let me tell you the day the stock market will crash. He said, well, Howard, you don't know that. I said, oh, I absolutely do. He says, when? I said, the day you retire. I said, it's just Murphy's Law.
Right.
It's just the way life works out. The day you need that money is the day it's not there.
Right, that's true.
So
what did you do?
How can we combat that?
Right.
I said, so we'll play a game. You're putting away $20,000 a year. I think it's wonderful. You're putting this money away for retirement without any knowledge of what it's going to grow to, but that's fine. That's how we all play the game. So take $20,000 and you give me $10,000 a year, and you keep $10,000 a year, and you keep doing what you're doing. I said, but with my $10,000 a year that you're giving me, I will show you how to guarantee $700,000 completely tax-free at some point during your retirement.
Okay, that's significant.
Significant.
So, okay, so did he drop what he was doing and
Well,
started
no,
to pay attention?
Absolutely. He said, well,
Okay.
how could you make such a bold statement? I said, very simple. How old are your parents? He said, they're 69. I said, good health, non-smokers? He said, yes. I said, guess what? For $10,000 a year, I can buy a $700,000 life insurance policy on them. Now, you're going to be 70 in 25 years. They'll be 94. God willing, they're here, but they're not supposed to be.
Right.
And if they're not, what gets paid out? $700,000 completely tax-free.
Tax-free.
You're the beneficiary. And if God willing they are here, the fortune that you've made with your $10,000 a year in the market, start enjoying it. Retire, start using it, because it's just a matter of time before your parents pass away and this money is paid out. Now, don't tell me about it being a morbid thought or I'm hoping for my parents to die. No, that's not it at all. It's showing you how to create money that you had no idea was available to you, and how your parents want to help you as much as possible. They may not be in the financial position, but you don't need their monies. You can do it.
It's very creative. I really like that idea.
Well, thank you.
It's a wonderful idea. And this was your idea.
This was my idea. As many of these things, you know, over the past 30 years since I've been in the field of insurance, but going back with our family 50 years, you know, we've created so many of these different strategies to really put the estate planning into the forefront of people, whether you're wealthy or not. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You've worked hard for whatever it is. You want to make sure your family gets to enjoy what you've created.
Absolutely, and I think that a lot of people, and sure, I'm one of the people who's guilty of this. You put your money with a broker and you just sort of keep your fingers crossed and hope that you're going to get where you want to go. And it just
Right.
it doesn't seem like the smart move.
It doesn't always work. Sometimes it does. And listen, we're all guilty and victims of that, but that's okay.
Right.
We're not here to bash brokers or anybody,
Right,
but that's just life.
But then we're a slave to either micromanaging what we're doing and being a slave to the monthly reports that we're getting, or keeping your fingers crossed that the market's going to do what we want it to do. But obviously, we know how volatile it is.
Absolutely. So here is how we look at leveraging when it comes to the retirement plans. So we've given 2 terrific ideas,
Right.
or actually 3, showing you how to utilize the money with full distribution out of an IRA. We talked about just distributing the income and leaving the principal to charity and creating insurance for the family. And we also talked about how to utilize, instead of the Roth IRA, why life insurance makes sense
Right.
if you don't need the money to live on, or you don't think you're going to need it in the future. And then, of course, for younger people our age, we're now talking about the 401k plan. That's 401k-AYE.
K-A-Y-E.
Right. But again, be your own beneficiary. Create your inheritance. And don't be afraid to have these conversations with your family, because now more than ever, estate planning is in the open. And you'll see as your parents get older, they want to discuss these different things with you because they realize they're not going to be forever. They've realized you've reached a certain level of maturity, that they can discuss things, and at the end of the day, it's what is the best approach for our particular family situation.
Howard, this has really been fascinating for me. I didn't realize that you could leverage money this way. You can increase the value of your IRA. It was really very, very helpful. One of the best shows we've done so far.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad. And again, the message to people is that you don't have a choice when it comes to your retirement plan. Age 70 and a half, the government says you must take that money.
Right.
And prior to 59 and a half, if you take it, there's a penalty. So there's a window. And for those that don't need the money, for those that are turning 70 and a half, that's where I want people to realize there are alternatives. And this is where life insurance becomes such an important aspect of the overall planning. And again, for the younger people that are our age, that aren't faced with distribution at this time, we are looking for a way to accumulate and create as much as possible.
This is the time.
This is the time, and this is where the life insurance on family members can be so beneficial.
Absolutely. Well, for more information, it's available at 561-417-5883 and insurewealthtv.com. Thanks, Howard. This has really been eye-opening for me.
Well, once again, Michelle, it's been a pleasure, and it's been wonderful being here.
And once again, for more information, 561-417-5883 and insurewealthtv.com. Thanks for watching. See you next week.